you said it initially, and it's like bears repeating. It's like that inability to speak about something makes it mysterious, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, are we gonna sit? Do you want to have a conversation about 2001? I don't want to have to try to describe of the feelings that I get from it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the great joys that I still get from seeing a movie is the inability to speak about it is a lot more exciting to me than fucking piss off is the I don't know.
The cinema is the point.
I don't, because it's too many words. It's a waste of time. It's like, I felt it.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. I'm one of those people that would prefer, certainly with many films that I really enjoy, to not talk about them.
Yeah.
Or just be like, it's enough to say like, yeah, it's fucking great. You should see it.
I think it's hard. It's hard to choose one of the pictures. I have very strong feelings about 2001. Out of Lolita, out of Clockwork Orange, out of Eyes Wide Shut, and that sort of thing. But 2001, it's a strange thing. I mean, when I started the Capitol Theater here, as I said, when his name, of course, there wasn't a great deal written about the film or written about the mystery of the film before it was released. And so when I went to see it, I expected much more than a film. And as I said, we got it, And I think I guess I've been very affected by religion in my life, and that sort of that side of me found an extraordinary kind of comfort in the end of the film. A very beautiful moment. And when 2001 came out, everything screeched the other way. It was amazing because it simply stopped how you normally would experience time and forced you again, with great authority, to look at a world, part of it in conjecture, part of it based in scientific fact, but to take you somewhere else completely where you've never been before, and really made you, immersed you in the drama. I thought one of the great murder scenes of all time is the destruction of Hal, for example. It's an extraordinary murder scene, really. His murdering of the other scientists who were sleeping, it just says malfunction, and you begin realizing it's a person it's this machine taking their lives. But again, basically, as I say, it's a murder scene. But look how it's done. You've never seen anything like it. I think we didn't see anything like it up at that point. I still don't think you've been immersed in a world in that way. Certainly not in commercial, quote commercial cinema unquote. At that time, coming out, MGM presents, and suddenly you're taken to another time frame.
Well, I love the idea of an intermission. I love it in plays, and I love it when movies do it. And I think, especially since I'm such a storyteller, I really like taking the audience on telling them a story. And I love different storytelling techniques that you can use to, delay an audience gratification or goose it to some degree or another. And, to me, I guess my favorite intermission of all time is 2001, where the seemingly almost storyless whole first act goes, and then a conflict is introduced the minute before the introduction. The intermission. The minute before the intermission kicks in.
Yeah.
Like you had no idea that there was even a story going to be building up.
Right. Yeah.
And then the question becomes, and it's a question. It's not an answer. It's a question. Is that technology or is that spirituality? Again, but is it a spiritual thing? Is it a technological thing? But it's a slab. But I would think if I was going to try to sell technology, I might have a few working parts. Okay, well now you're trying to tie it together like it's a movie that has a story, and it doesn't. No, it has a.
Okay, well let's go through it.
It has a theme, but it's actually curious. While you're describing it, is. The apes respond to the sound, but they don't respond to the sound that way. It's not like, they can't handle it. No, when it goes wah, when they touches it and then it goes wah, they respond to the wah. But it's not. It's a different sound. It's like it's not. They're not going.
They're not going like this, right?
I think it's one of the questions of cinema. It's one of the reasons that you can say that there's a brilliance to. If not Arthur C. Clarke's novel, but to Stanley Kubrick's movie. He seems to ignore everything about drama, except just enough rope with knots in it
You're so right.
to connect you to the next knot, to the next knot, to the next knot.
You're right.
And a case can be made that when the movie loses it, when it gets more metaphysical at the end, is when he stops supplying knots that are narrative. And the knots don't need to connect to each other. They just need to get you forward. And
You're right.
do. And they do. And
It's like another crew member.
This show is very much like Entertainment Tonight, but for like but for astronauts. No, but it's done as if it's Entertainment Tonight. It has, and he's listening to it like he's listening to his report on Entertainment Tonight. I thought it was very much like you've done Angie, and you're watching the Entertainment Tonight special on Angie, and here comes your guy.
I'm in school. I believe I'm at Long Beach State in April of that year. Semester's coming to an end. Everybody's talking about this movie that is a drug trip. So the word around campus, or at least around my circles, and I'm a teetotaler. Never done any of that at all. But I smoked cigarettes for a year. That was the worst thing I did in college.
For 1 year?
Yeah, I quit 1 year, and I quit. But everybody was talking about this kind of like Roger Corman's The Trip. And so the scuttlebutt on campus was, this is trippy. This is going to be like The Trip. This is going to be like a really trippy film. So everybody was getting ready to get into a car and go down to, I believe it was the Pantages Theater, to see the film. So I think I saw the film probably the first week it opened. And I went with 3 or 4 of my college friends. We all piled into a car, drove into Hollywood. And correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been the Pantages. It might have been another one of those big movie palaces in 1968. But we walked like 9 blocks to get to the theater. Got into a line because in those days, there was no such thing as buying your tickets ahead of time. And so we waited in line for a long time, and everybody was I looked around, nobody was smoking grass because there were cops up and down Hollywood Boulevard. But when I walked into that theater and people started filling it up, it was filled with smoke. It was just filled with smoke. I had never been to a movie where I smelled marijuana as thick as a London fog inside that movie palace. But everybody was in the theater, a lot of guys, not as many women, more men, everybody with long hair, everybody making a lot of noise. I thought I wouldn't be able to hear the dialogue. First of all, I didn't realize, because the movie hadn't started yet, there was going to be very little dialogue. But it didn't matter. I was worried that there wasn't going to be room to hear the dialogue because everybody was making so much noise in the theater. And then when the movie started, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra started, and it hits that tremendous chord, it shut everybody the F up. Everyone just got completely quiet. So as the music was decaying after that big explosive chord, I was aware that everyone was still. It was kind of, in itself, before the film started, mind-blowing. And then what began, I think, for a lot of people in that theater was a religious experience, fueled by whatever they were on. For me, it was not so much a religious experience, but one of the most audacious films I had ever watched in my life. The audacity, and of course, we all knew Kubrick, and we all knew he was audacious, but the audacity and the risks he took telling that story, if you could even call it a story, set me back. And I think, just rocked my world for sure. I'm watching the movie completely in a state of intoxication, because Stanley intoxicated me. Or perhaps I was getting a contact high with all the smoke in the room. But I was completely intoxicated by what I experienced. And it wasn't a film, it was an experience. It was the most experiential thing I had ever seen since I was a little kid and got scared to death by The Greatest Show on Earth. Also, you have to remember how big the screen was. The screen was so big, the person in the theater, several people in the theater got up and started walking into the screen. and that was, by the way, you can probably look it up in the LA Times. It was reported that people were walking into the screen in those days, at least in that theater. The screens were like louvers. They were vertical strips of reflected, reflective material. Everybody I saw the movie with that day were all probably under 35 years old. So I don't know anyone that I was unaware of it. Look, half the audience could have walked out and I would not have noticed.
Right.
I looked dead center, dead left to center, dead right of center, because that was my field of vision. And I was completely, I was completely magnetized by what was happening. Absolutely repeated viewings. I mean, I've seen 2001 countless times. I can't tell you how many times I sat there beginning to end. When I finally saw it for the first time in 70 millimeter in New York City in 2001, when it was reissued on that special year. But I can watch it over and over again, and I don't claim to have understood it metaphysically or philosophically or even completely when I first saw it, but it kept bringing me back, and the layers continued to expose themselves to me. And with 2001: A Space Odyssey, he was also a wizard technologically. He was almost an engineer. His mind had a kind of OCD quality where when he focused in on something, he was doing it for himself, and we were the beneficiaries. Of whatever reason, he was creating these incredibly advanced spacecraft that no one had ever seen before in anybody else's films. Those spacecraft alone were kind of works of art, I always felt. And those spacecraft, especially the Jupiter mission craft, is what inspired Ralph McQuarrie and myself to create the mothership in Close Encounters. Inspired George Lucas with the Imperial Starship Destroyer.
Yeah,
and included and certainly inspired Ridley Scott in creating the space freighter Nostromo. These wouldn't have existed unless Stanley had come first. He was really, really concerned about machine learning and machines teaching machines to teach machines. And that was that was I think the main link between 2001 and his version of AI. But I mean Stanley Kubrick with 2001 created, I think, the first 3D experience. The first, not 3D in terms of of interocular, but I'm talking about wraparound, three-dimensional sight and sound. And even though the screen did have its boundaries and you could look off the screen, top, bottom, left, right, it didn't matter because it had enough of a fold around the audience that the audience was really enwrapped and by the experience. And 2001 was the perfect film for it. And also, 2001 also does something with suspense. The middle part of that film is as suspenseful as anything Alfred Hitchcock ever made. I feel that film is the most suspenseful movie Stanley ever made. But the thing about the picture is, the movie it's an anti-emotional film that's truly a deeply empathic picture, but it's kind of anti-emotional.
When you discover, baby, there is no other, baby. When you recover, baby.